Baruch Hashem, we have a schus to begin a new maimer today. We'll go to the first one in Parshas Bechukosei. Yeah, the first one, Parshas Bechukosei, would be page Memhei, column 1. Memhei, column 1. On top it says Bahar Bechukosei, middle of the page. In English, it would be page 89. Just make sure on top it says Bahar Bechukosei. Today's class is dedicated by an anonymous, grateful student in the merit of a family member who is facing challenges. Okay, may they be able to be liberated from all their challenges. Thank you very much, and Amen. Okay, we begin a new maimer today, but first in Bechukosei, as I said. It's both this week's parsha, but it's also a preparation for Shavuos, Haba Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael L'Tova, because it's a maimer also about Torah, and two dimensions of Torah, as we will see. The Alter Rebbe said this maimer on Shabbos Parshas Bahar Bechukosei, Tov Kuf Samach Daled. Tov Kuf Samach Daled would be 1804. So that's how many years ago? 220 years ago, right? 220 years ago, Tov Kuf Samach Daled, so Tov Reish Samach Daled, Tov Shin Samach Daled, Ayin Daled. This year is Tov Shin Pei Daled, 5784, so it's exactly 220 years. So it's very special to learn this maimer, and as I said, it begins on a pasuk in the beginning of the parsha, and then it discusses a whole sugya connected to Torah. So he begins. Im Bechukosei Teilechu. The opening pasuk of Parshas Bechukosei, everybody knows, is Im Bechukosei Teilechu, Ves Mitzvosei Tishmeru Vasisem Oisam. Translation, literally, if you walk, telecho means if you go, if you walk, Bechukosei, in my laws or in my statutes, if you walk in them, if you follow them, telecho from the word, lech lecha, vayelech, leilech, and you protect my mitzvahs, tishmeiru, and you do them, so then begins a whole series of blessings. I will give you your rain in the right time. The earth will give its produce. The trees of the field will give its fruit, etc., etc. So it's ein Gitte. The Gitte noch besser. So it says, Hine Amru Razal. On this the Gemara says, Avodah Zarah Hey Amud Aleph. In Gemara Avodah Zarah Daf Hey Ein Im Ela Loshen Tachanunim. Very interesting taich. The word im could be taiched if. That's how most people translate. Im b'chukosei teilechu, if you'll follow my b'chukosei. Come Chazal and say, einim alosh dachnunim, im is a form of pleading, of begging. Im b'chukosei teilechu, if only you will do it. Please. Yeah. The Ebershter kavayachol betzich. A betzich. It's not im, if so. Im is like if only, if, please. That's what Chazal says. Shenem, what's the source for this? We have a pasuk in Tehillim, Pei Aleph, Lu ami shemei ali Yisrael b'drachei alechu. So Rashi, over there in Gemara Avodah Zarah, he says that from this pasuk the Gemara is proving this. Hashem says, Lu ami shemei ali. What's Lu? What's Lu? Lu is a form of techina. It's a form of pleading, of begging, of requesting. Like the pasuk says in Vayetze, Lu yehi kidvarecha. Halavai. Lu is like halavai. If only. I wish it could be this way. So the pasuk says, "Lu ami shemei li Yisrael b'drachei alechu kimat oivei machnia v'altzerem ashav yadi." We say it in the Shir Shel Yom, in the song, right? In the song of which day? Today's Shir Shel Yom, Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. Today's Shir Shel Yom is this capital. So, Lu Ami Shemei Ali, Yisrael B'drachei Alecho. If only, like Lu, I wish my nation would listen to me and walk in my ways, and then I would subdue their enemies, etc. So Rashi says from this pasuk, you see, Rashi in Avodah Zarah, Daf Hei, HaKadosh Baruch Hu mischanan lifneim sheyishmru satayra. He's pleading, he's begging, he's requesting that they keep the Torah. Lu ami, it's a tchina, lu yehei kedvarecha. So Mamela, from this the Gemara explains that when it says im, it's also the same idea. Im, right? It's like lu. It's im, if only Bechukosei telech. I wish, like this is my dream. This is a dream come true. As opposed to a contract, as opposed to a deal, which is more. If you do this, you'll be blessed. If you don't do this, you'll be cursed. That's what the Gemara says. Ein im ela lashon tachanunim. The Marsha over there, Maseches Avodah Zarah, explains the Chiddush. He says that usually im means if, right? Im, if yeah, or if not. But you have a few exceptions. One exception is im kesef talves ami, esa'ani imach. It's not if you're going to lend money to a poor person. It's a mitzvah to lend a person to a poor person. What's im? It's not if you will. Right? It doesn't say if you'll put on tefillin, if you'll keep Shabbos. It's a mitzvah to lend money. So I'd say im kesef talva. So over there, im means something else. So the Marsha says you have another Parshas Mishpatim, im koifer yushas alav. There's certain times you have to pay a penalty, koifer, for animal kills. It's not a voluntary thing. It's an obligation. So why did it say im? Yeah. The Marsha brings all these psukim. Yaakov Avinu says in Parshas Vayetze, when he's going on his journey after his dream, Im yiyeh Hashem elokimi madi. If Hashem is going to be with me, then I'll do this. It wasn't just, if you do it, I'll give you back something. It was a request. If only. There was no other option than Hashem to be with him. So that's why the Marsha says, Im Bechukosei telechu, Chazal is saying, don't think it's if. Yeah, if not, im, as a suffix, like maybe yeah, maybe not, but rather, it's a concept of bakasha and tachanun. That's what Alter Rebbe is bringing here. You have to understand what is the meaning here of these tachanunim and why Chazal say it here. They could have touched im, right? Im b'chukosei, if you do it, you're going to get the blessings. Later in the parsha it says, V'im lo yisishmuli, if you don't listen to me. Over there it doesn't mean halavai, you don't listen to me. Later in Bechukosei it says, V'im lo yisishmuli. Over there it means if, right? It doesn't mean halavai, you don't listen to me. There were two contradict. So something was driving the Chazal to take im out of the lashon, the literal interpretation, and say it means tachanunim. What is it? And what is the concept here? What is the begging here? What is the pleading here? So it's pleading for his sake, for our sake. What's the request? Something else to understand is the expression Bechukosei. Asher pirshu Chazal, on this Chazal say, on this pasuk, on these words, B'kiddush and Daf Lametes. Kiddush and Daf Lametes, ala posuk, es Chukosei tishmoiru, in Parshas Kedoshim. In Vayikra, you test, 1919, the pasuk also uses the word Chukosei tishmoiru. So Chazal say, Chukos shechakakti lachem. The laws, shechakakti. Chakakti means I engraved for you. I engraved for you. So you see from here that Chazal are teaching chukah not just as a law, like a chayk. You know, chayk means a law, a statue. But chayk from the word lachkoik. Right? Chakuk. What's chakuk? Chakuk means it's engraved. That's what they say. Chukah is shechakakti. Shechakti means I engraved. Like letters that are engraved in the stone. And that's the expression used in Bechukosei. He doesn't say the words, he uses dafka Bechukosei telechu. So what's the teichen of that? And what are they connected with being engraved? A third thing you have to understand is the word telecho. Telecho means to walk. Usually you would say, like it says afterwards, es mitzvah shmeiro. That's a very common term in Chumash. You should watch, you should protect the mitzvahs. Or, va'asisem moisem, es mitzvah tasu. What does it mean to walk in Bechukosei? So you can say it's just an expression. You don't walk in the laws, you do the laws, you protect the laws. Right? You don't walk in the laws. So it's an expression. In Bechukosei telecho, you're going to follow the Bechukosei. But the word telecho is not a usual word. It has to do with walking, with moving, with going. It's something that you do, you perform. It's something that you have to watch, you have to protect. So these are the three questions. Im, the first three words. Im, Bechukosei, telecho. Allah said, what's the teichen of im? Which Chazal say doesn't mean literally if, it means pleading. Number two, Bechukosei, which means engraved. And number three, telecho, which means to walk in these laws. And the truth is, it's really a contradiction, because if something is engraved, it's actually very, very stable, it's solid, right? It's etched in stone, as we say. Engraved is etched in stone, not telecho. I remember I made a matzeva for my father, so my brother was dealing with Mr. Greenbaum. He makes matzevas. So he was saying it jokingly. He came, he said, I just got off the phone with him. And Mr. Greenbaum told us, don't worry, the matzeva is perfect. It's not going to be moved. It's stable. For him, it was a very good news. You know, it's staying there. It's not. It's solid. So Bechukosei l'chayr is not telecho, but here he says dafka telecho. Okay. In order to explain all of this, hine yadu, what's known. Ki b'Torah shebeksav yesh beis minei ksiva. When you speak about Torah shebeksav, the written Torah, ksav means written, but there's two forms of writing. Torah comes in two forms. Ki beluchas nemar, when it comes to the luchas, it says in Parshas Kisisa, v'hamichtav michtav elikim charos ala luchas. When the Torah describes the tablets that Moshe brought down from the mountain, later he smashed them, of course. So the expression is, the writing, the michtav, the writing is a writing from Hashem, but it's not just michtav, it's charos. Charos means engraved. Engraved in the tablets. Shaksavu me'atzmon shalaluchas. The writing comes from the atzmius, from the entity, from the essence of the tablets themselves. Asher nechkak mehem ubahem. It's engraved, the letters are engraved from the tablets and inside of them. The oisius, the letters don't have an identity, an essence on their own outside of the stone. That's what engraving means. As he puts it, mehem ubahem. The letters are engraved from the stone itself. It's not you taking ink or another form of another material with which you can write and putting it on it. No, it's mehem. You're using the stone itself to create the letters. You're carving it out from the stone. The stone is the material from which you're creating the letters. You're not adding something outside of it. And it's bohem, and it's in the stone itself. It's not on top of the stone. You're not gluing, you're not putting something onto the stone. It's inside. It's mehem ubahem. Avoshar Torah shebeksav, but that's only the luchas. The rest of the Torah shebeksav is diyoi ksuva ala klaf. It's ink written on parchment. Asher ha'oisius he mohus b'fnei atzman v'loi ma'atzmus haklaf. The letters are an entity on their own, independent, not coming from the essence of the parchment. You don't take the parchment and engrave, cut out in the parchment itself. No, there's parchment, it's cloth. And then there's ink that you put on the cloth. So this is the difference between chakika and ksiva. V'nikras Torah shebeksav. This is called Torah shebeksav, ki ha-Torah melubeshes beksav. That's why it's called Torah shebeksav, because the Torah is manifested, it's communicated through writing. V'day l'mevin, and this is enough for the one who understands. The difference between here, the physical difference is clear, but what it represents, two concepts, chika and ksiva, as we will see, it represents two dimensions in Torah. So the bottom line is, when you talk about chakika, the letters are not second addition. The letters are not something that connect to the stone. Rather, they are the stone itself. In ksiva and writing, The oisius are nice if they're added to the cloth, to the parchment. Yeah, that's clear. As we'll see, it's not just a technical difference. It represents two different states of Torah. Two different ways in which one can experience Torah. There's the way Torah is experienced by the Luchas, the way Torah is experienced in a Sefer Torah. And it represents two different states in reality. This he's going to explain. The famous expression in Zohar and Parshas, I think it's Parshas Bais, the Zohar says that there's three kishrin, klas kishrin in. Kishrin means kesher. There's three knots, three bonds. You have Kutchabrichu is Hashem, Oraisa is Torah, and Yisrael is the Jewish people. And the Zohar says, Yisrael connect, they're knotted, they're bond, they connect to Torah. And Torah connects to Hashem. We learned it also in the Maimon and Bahar. From the level of Achoisi, went to the level of Rayasi, he introduced this Zohar. That Yisrael connects to Torah, Torah connects to Hashem. And the whole Maimon was, what's the Maila in Torah over the Neshamas? Because Torah, even though it also came down into physical, the Torah you plant in the earth, everything we learned over there. So here he also begins with the Zohar. So b'meila al kain b'chol nitzutz v'nefesh al l'kismi Yisrael yeshna gam ken beis b'chinas elu oisis achkukim v'oisis aksov. So if these two states exist in Torah, it means that in every nitzutz, in every spark, and in every divine soul, you also have these two things. You have the concept of chakike, you have oisis achakukim v'oisis aksov. You have letters that are engraved and letters that are written. In other words, whatever exists in Torah exists also in Neshamas Yisrael. So there's no soul, there's no nitzutz, there's no spark, and there's no divine soul of Yisrael that doesn't have these two dimensions. Because since Yisrael miskashran b'iraisa, Yisrael is knotted with Torah, and they become one entity. So if these two entities, if these two aspects exist in Torah, they're reflected also in the soul. So l'chayra, I understand, Torah, I understand. You have the luchas, you have the tablets, you have the Sefer Torah. What does it mean in a soul? So that means the soul, there's the way the letters are engraved and the way the letters are written. In order to explain this, he says, the pasuk says in Zechariah, literally it means, it's the Haftarah, we read it also, Ba'aloischan, Shabbos Chanukah, it's the Haftarah of Zechariah Pei Gimel, the Novi Zechariah. So the pasuk says that Hashem says, "V'nasati lecha mahalchem beinoim demeil." The Navi gives over to the Kohen Gadol, Yahayada, the Kohen Gadol, the beginning of Vayesheni. It's a very interesting pasuk. V'nasati lecha mahalchem. I will give you the ability to move, to be a mahalchem for the word again, leilach. Beinoim demeil, among these who stand, among those who stand. Yeah, I will give you the gift to be one of the mahalchim, one of the movers, one of the people that, one of the, not people, one of the spiritual energies that go. So what's pshat? So v'hinei ha'oimdim hem ha'malachim u'mahalchim hem neshamas kol Yisrael. So pshat, Alter Rebbe says, oimdim represents angels. Mahalchim represents neshamas, souls of Yisrael. We say in the morning in davening, when we speak about the malachim, you remember? Hashem Misharsav, and Tizbarach Lanetzach, before Krishma. Kulam oimdim berum oilam. They stand in the height of the world, umashmiyim biyira divrei lekim Chaim amelech oilam. Kulam ahuvim, kulam brudim, kulam. The expression is oimdim. So this is the promise that the Navi is giving. You won't be an oimid, you'll be a mahalach. Stam interesting thing. I mentioned the last Shia, the Panim Yafas, the Baal HaFlora, Pinchas Horovitz, student of the Maggid. So I spoke about Sefer HaMakne, Kedushin, Haflang, Suvis. So here's a commentary on Chumash called Panim Yafas. I think it's in the introduction to Panim Yafas. I think it's there, if I'm not mistaken. He says something very interesting. The Gemara says in Maseches Chagiga that how do you know if you should learn Torah from somebody? So he says, yeah. So he brings a pasuk from Malachi, Sif Sekoyin Yishmru Das, Malach Hashem Tzvais, Im Harav Doime LaMalach Hashem Tzvais, Yevakshu Torah Mepiyu. Vim Lav Al Yevakshu Torah Mepiyu. If your Rav, if your Rebbe, if your teacher is like an angel, Doime LaMalach, you should seek Torah from his mouth. If he's not like a Malach, make sure don't learn from him. That's a pretty... I don't know if you did research before, if I'm a malach or not, but I hate to break the news to you. If that's the qualification to wait for the person that ever being a malach, how many? It's a tall order. What does it even mean if your Rav is daimel malach? What is that supposed to mean? What does it mean he's daimel malach? What does it mean he flies? What's pshat? He has wings? Doesn't mean that. What's daimel malach? So there's a lot of different interpretations. It's an interesting Maimon Chazal. So the Bala Flora Pinchas Horovitz says something very, very special. He says, he brings this pasuk. A malach is an oimid. A neshama is a mahalach. He says, what's the worst thing of a teacher? The worst thing about a teacher? Yeah. He's looking to express himself rather than to teach his students. So if he already learned this Gemara or this Sugya 100 times, he wants to learn something new. He wants to say a Chiddush. Yeah. So he's not really tuning into what the students need to hear and their level, because he just wants to express himself. Says Marav Doimel Malach Hashem Tzvayis, if he's an Oimid, if he's not a Mahalach. An Oimid means you're ready to stand in the same place. He said that's a real teacher. In other words, a real teacher is you're emotionally and intellectually, you have attunement. You're attuned to the recipient. Sometimes you have a Rav, he wants to express himself. You're with me, you're not with me, what do I care? They understand, they don't understand. I'm going. It's a pasme to sit with my students and explain a pasuk chumash. One of them is a 4-year-old kid. I'm a rabbi shel kol bnei hagoylech, ben agon, and what I should sit with you and explain to you a Mishnah. It's a pas for me, a studies between two Rambams, and to deal with a Rambam, another Rambam. The kid doesn't even know the Mishnah on which the Gemara is based, on which the Rambam is halacha, never mind studies in Rambam. Right? But for that, he has to slow down, not be a mahalach, he has to be an oimid. An oimid is, he stays at one place, because that's what the student needs. Okay, I'll call upon him. Why malachim called oimdim? What's this idea? Hineksiv, the pasuk says, Bidvar Hashem Shamayim Nasu V'ruach Piv Kol Tzvam. Pasuk says in Tehillim, Perek Lamed Gimel, Tehillim 33, with the word of Hashem, heaven was made. U'v'ruach Piv, and from the spirit of his mouth, Kol Tzvam. Kol Tzvam means all the legions, all the creations connected to heaven. It's all from Dvar Hashem and Ruach Piv, the spirit of his mouth. Hainu, this means Shamalachim, all the angels, Makim, Mekayim, Mekayr Chaytzvanu Briyasan, Humediburish LaKadosh Baruch Hu Kavayach. The source from where, the place, which is the source from which the Malachim were chatzov, from which they're chiseled out, right? A machzav is like a quarry from where you take out, you extract rock, right? So called makom machzav. So the source from which the malachim were honed, were chiseled out, from which they're formed, ubriyasan, from which they were created, is mediburish lakadosh baruch hu kavayach. It comes kavayach from Hashem's word. That's what it says. Bidvar Hashem shamayim nasu. Shamayim, heaven, is a metaphor for the malachim, for all of the spiritual, heavenly creatures. So what is it? It's from Bidvar Hashem. It's from Dvar Hashem. Hagam shein leidmus haguvel and arachil of Bechukosei. This is Nepiyut Yigdal. In Yigdal we say that ein leidmus haguf. He doesn't have the visage of a body. We cannot estimate his holiness with a comparison to us, by comparing ourselves to us. It's interesting that in the Siddur, the Alter Rebbe didn't do this piyut. So most Chabad Chassidim wouldn't even know what these words mean, because they never say it. In the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe, he took out a lot of piyutim. So there's no Yigdal in his Siddur, in his Nusach of davening. The nusach. I'm just saying, stop. But the piyut is a piyut. So it's a maimed. He said it. Stop. It's interesting. Afal pikein dibre Torah b'lashon b'nei adam. So what's pshat vayi? It's Hashem's words. It doesn't have a mouth. It doesn't have a dmus haguf. But the Torah speaks in the language of people. The Gemara says many places, Dibre Torah b'lashon b'nei adam. Li'ikaris is galus oire l'bchinas nevroim b'shem dibur. Dibur is a metaphor. It represents something. Just like when we speak, we express, we reveal our energy, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, our experiences. So the Hisgalus Oire, when his light is manifested to the created beings, it's called Dibur. Doesn't mean that it's words like we have words. It's the same form and the same image and the same limitation. But the concept that Dibur represents is Dibur Torah K'Lashon B'nei Adam. So when we say that Malachim come from Dvar Hashem, it means that the revelation of the divine energy, which is invested in what we call Malachim, that's called Dibur. Yeah, and that's the metaphor, because Dibur Torah speaks in the language of people. V'hinei oisis adibur heimal derech mashal gufim mechulakim v'oimdim kol echad levade asher bedibur zelo yisav dibur achilayla. So when you talk about dibur, it says something now, a fascinating thing. When you talk about oisis of dibur, oisis of speech, so it's like a metaphor of gufim mechulakim v'oimdim. Each word or each letter, it's like a body, a guf, and they're mechulak. Mechulak means divisible, split up one from another, and they stand. Kol echad levade. Each word on its own. Midibur zeh lo yishav dibur acher lo'olam. From one dibur, there won't be created another dibur ever. It is what it is. These are the words. You're using letters, you're creating words, and from one dibur, you're not going to have another dibur. In Sefer Yetzirah, one of the earliest Kabbalistic works, oisis are called avonim, stones. And he says, just like from two stones, he says, you could build two homes. Which means if you have two letters, Aleph Bais, you could make two words. Aleph Bais and Bais Aleph. A word is like a home. Yeah. And just like a home, a tent, whatever, it's made up of stones. Each letter on its own, you can't do much with it. But you bring letters together, a wordsmith, you bring letters together. It's like bringing stones together and you build. Just like you have a home, you can have a tiny little home, you can have a room, and then you can have a home, and you can have many rooms, and that's what letters are. You take letters and you form letters into a word, right? And then you bring many words together and you have a sentence. And then you bring sentences together and you have a paragraph. And you bring paragraphs together and you have a chapter. And you bring chapters together and you have a sefer, you have a book. Maybe 1,000 pages. Wie groß ist der neue Sefer von Harav Wosner? 608 pages. So you know the Avodah. It's not simple, right? 400 hours. Okay? 400 hours. You finished the Sefer now on Chinuch. So, why is it called Avonim? An Evan is an Evan, right? A stone is a stone. One stone is not going to become another stone. It has its place, it has its identity, it has its form. You bring in another stone and another stone and another stone and you built a beautiful room. And that's the metaphor for a word. So that's what Alter Rebbe is saying here is that Oisis HaDibur, even though they're not stones, they're much less concrete, they're more edel, they're words. But every letter and every word has its identity. It is what it is. You know, if you're reading an article or you're reading a book or you're listening to somebody speak, there's a seder. This is one letter, another letter, another letter. This is a word. And once this became a word, it's not changing into another word. It's just not how it works. It is what it is. It is what it is. That's what he's saying. Lo yisav dibur achel lo'olam. Valkein, that's the metaphor of dibur. What do we mean by this? When you say Hashem's dibur, it's representing the idea that when the energy comes out, it comes out in a form of dibur, it has a fixed identity. This is what the energy looks like. Just like he says, it's gufim mechulakim. It's the way the divine energy assumes a particular identity through this letter, This is the koyach that it represents, and it's not going to be substituted or more for expand into other energies, into other koyachs. It is what it is. Right? Just like you have a program code, also uses oisius, the back end of any computer, the back end of any program. It's all oisius. It's all a formation of oisius, of letters. I don't know if we have any programmers here. So every letter has its place. And the sequence is very meticulous, and the functionality of each letter and what it represents is very precise. Alkain, therefore, what does this represent? Hamalochim asher avedosim b'bchinas ava, k'may machane mechal, oy avedosim b'bchinas yira k'may machane gavriel, heim oimdim b'dum oilam b'madrega achas. So therefore, because the malachim are a product of dibur, so therefore, the malachim, that their avoid is in a state of love, like machane mechal, the camp of mechal, or the avoid is in a state of yira, or like machane gavriel. So they stand. What does it mean? They stand. They stand in the height of the world in one state, in one madrega. And the love and the awe that was given for them in the 6 days of creation, lo yishanu es tafkidam, will never deviate from their tafkid. The word is a word. That's who they are. They represent this energy, and they're going to stay fixed in this energy. It's pure holiness. It's spiritual energy. But it's the dibur of Hashem. Once the ice comes out in this form, this is what it is. So from Sheishis and Mebereshis, Malach Michal never had a bad day. He never had a bad day. Huh? Very reliable, very predictable, fixed. They stand. There's a consistency there. There's a predictability there. That's the idea of oimdim. And that's why it's called dibur. Bidvar Hashem shemayim nasu. That's what it is. Lo yishanu es tafkidam. They're not deviating from their tafkid. Liyos hoilich v'gadol miyayim liyayim. To grow and change from day to day. Ukamayim ben akosov. The pasuk says in Yeshayahu, Perek Vav, Srafim oimdim mimaloi. Here again, Srafim represents highest level of angels, which are called Srafim. Srafim from the word Sreifa. They're burnt up in ecstasy. They're oimdim. What's pshat oimdim? B'madrega achas. They stand in one madrega. No. Avol neshamas Yisrael. When you speak about neshamas Yisrael, aleim amru Yisrael olu b'machshav v'tchila. When it comes to neshamas, they're not called oimdim. On this, the Medrash says in Medrash Rabbi Bereshis, Yisrael olu b'machshav. Yisrael went up in the machshav, in his thought, tchila, in the beginning. Asher mekar chaitzvan, the source from where the neshamas come out is me'oisis ha-machshava nikras machshava ilah. It comes not from letters of dibur, bidvar Hashem. It comes from letters of thought, which is called machshava ilah. Malachim come from dibur. Neshamas come from machshava. Yisrael olu b'machshava. And machshava itself, it doesn't say Yisrael come from machshava. The olu b'machshava. So he's teaching in machshava itself, they're oila. They're above in the machshava itself. It's called machshava ilah, the highest form of machshava. What's the definition of machshava? In machshava, in thought, nothing is fixed. Once I said the words, like I say, like Achashverosh says in the Megillah, right? Dvar hamelech ein lahashav. Once the words came out, the words came out. Right? So you have to be careful with what you say. Lashon hara, other words, you sent it out, boom, it's like an arrow. You send the arrow, what are you going to do? Ishay mishum chitzav. It is what it is. The arrow is going to go, and it's going to hit this target. You had charata, it's already out of you. That's dibur. It is what it is. That's dibur. Machshava is a whole different world. Machshava, that's what he says. Ashehem kemayin hanevei atomet. Machshava, when you say neshama salal of machshava, you're referring to the fact that it's a different experience. There's constant change. There's constant transformation. There's constant moving around of energies. One machshava gives way to another machshava, is changed with another machshava, is substituted with another machshava, is transformed into another machshava, right? The world of thought, and thank God we don't see other people's thoughts. Both in a positive way and in an interesting way also. I don't want to say in a negative way. Machshava is a whole different world. There's nothing fixed in machshava. It's pure fluid. It's fluids. Lach belach, yavish beyavish, engroisa tarov. Sometimes a person doesn't even know what's happening. You go from one thought to another thought. In 5 seconds, you could go from one end of the world to the other end of the world. Oh, wow. Right. What do people cover in Shemona Esrei? How many countries do they travel from the beginning of Shemona Esrei to the end of Shemona Esrei? All the machshava. If you had to talk about it, I don't know what would happen. They say there was one Sayyid and he had a court case with a paritz, with an overlord. So the guy was taking him to court, so he went to his Rebbe and he said, how do I defend myself? So he gave him advice, he gave him counsel. He said, yeah, but what happens if the paritz is going to make up this in this story? So he says, then you'll say this, and what if he makes up this story, and you'll say this? What happens if he concocts this story? He says, daven nicht ken Shemona Esrei. Don't worry, he doesn't daven Shemona Esrei. You daven Shemona Esrei, so the chalams and the chalams and the chalams about this and this. He doesn't do that. He doesn't have the opportunity. He doesn't sit and meditate. There was once a mashpia in yeshivas. He was giving mussar to the bachra. So he said, what's the chutzpah of a bacher? He davens Shemona Esrei, and then at the end, a whole Shemona Esrei, he was thinking about something else. He was traveling, he went shopping, he went hiking, he went here, he went there. And then at the end, you say, all the words of my mouth should be accepted willingly by you. What's the chutzpah to say that? The Bachar says, why do you think I'm thinking when I say that? When I say Yilaratzin, I'm also thinking about something else. Like what? You're assuming that Yilaratzin is done with Kavanah. I'll call upon him. Machshav is a different world than Dibur. In Dibur, as he says, it's gufim mecholakim oimdim kolach. From one Dibur, there won't be another Dibur. He's saying Neshama Yisrael all of Machshava. He says, Kemayin hanevei atomet. Letters of Machshava, it's like a wellspring that is constantly flowing. Neveya means flowing. It's a spring that is, it's flowing, it's alive, it's vibrating. Kemayin Azal, on this the Gemara has an expression, Mevin davar mitoich davar. You understand one thing from another thing. So he says, the moment one thing falls in, one idea falls in the thought, which is connected to the source of seichel, like a mayan, you have the way the wellspring comes out in a fixed pool. That's already a fixed pool. But the mayan, right, it's ever increasing. Like the Gemara said about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, that he had 5 students, right? So about Rabbi Eliezer, he said, he used to compliment his students. So Rabbi Eliezer, he said, is bar surcheina ma'betipa. He's a cistern made of plaster that doesn't lose a drop. In other words, Rabbi Eliezer, Hagadol, the student of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he knew how to contain everything. Whatever he heard, he contained. But then he speaks about who was Kamayan Amizgaba, you remember? Rabbi Eliezer ben Aruch is Kamayin HaMizgaber. Kamayin HaMizgaber means like a wellspring that is always renewing itself. Not just containing the information and nothing losing. It's a cistern, it's a pool, and the water, there's no leak, which is a Gavaldik Inyan. It's memory, you retain it. Kamayin HaMizgaber means there's always something new. Rabbi Eliezer ben Aruch, there was a creativity there. Creativity means you're always creating something new. It's not this is the water and this is it. No, there's a whole new flow of water because the wellspring is alive. There's a source from which it's coming from, and this source is constantly putting in new information. That's what he says. So when the machshava is connected to the makar haseichel, to the source of creativity, right? It's a lebedik and freilich. There's no fixed machshava. One machshava, no, this is wrong. Another machshava. A new machshava, one machshava becomes another machshava. It grows to another machshava. Liyas mesrachiv u'mispashet yosef v'yosef. The moment the machshava like hits the makar ha-seichel, it's connected to the source from where ideas come from, right? Ideas don't come from nowhere. They come from what's called makar ha-seichel. You have an epiphany. You have an insight. It comes from somewhere. But that source is still subconscious. When the machshava is connected to there, so the machshava is yishalach b'rechava, it becomes expansive. And it becomes bigger and bigger, like the well that keeps on flowing. Kamayinam is gabe. There's always new stuff. It's growing. Machshava is never fixed. There's another way of looking at it. There's another way of thinking about it. So when that's what he says, neufel, b'nefel davar echad. When in a person's thought something falls in a haskala, a new idea from the makar ha-seichel, from the source of seichel, from the source from where awareness and ideas come from. There's a source from where it comes from. We don't have direct access to that source. But machshava is how it comes out from that source. So since it's still kshura, since it's still connected to the source, it's like the mayan. It's not the pool that became fixed, which is already disconnected from the mayan. It may have come from the mayan, but now you put it into a cistern. That's what they always did, right? When you connect it to the source of the mayan, to the makar ha-seichel, so then it's mevin davar mitoich davar. From one thing, there's a toich davar. You go deeper, there's more and more. It's not oimer, it's choshev. That's the difference. So that's the chilik of malach b'dvar Hashem shamayim nasu, and the neshama says, "Oh, Yisrael olu b'machshava." That's the difference. Ashal zen emma. On this, the pasuk says in Bereshis, "V'no her yotzei me'eden lahashkas hasagan." The river comes out of Eden to irrigate the garden. He's talking over there when Adam was created, and he put Adam and Chava into the garden. So he says there was a river that comes out from Eden. We call it Gan Eden, right? Because that river goes and it irrigates, it brings water to the garden. So that river connects Eden to the garden. And then from there, Yisham Yipared, the river splits up into 4 outlets, Arba Rashim. You have what's called the Gichain, and you have the Chidekel, and you have Pishain and Pros, right? Gichain and Chidekel. Chidekel is the Tigris River, and Pros is the Euphrates River, and then you have Pishain, Rashi says, is the Nile. So the Alter Rebbe teaches, no herzeh hu animshich v'yotzei tamid me'edin hu makar hachachma v'oilach u'misrachev ad shebal hashkos gan zdarim deiraisa nikras Torah shebeksav kana. So he says a gewaldike teich. This river is what's always coming out from Eden. Eden represents the source of chachma, the source of wisdom. This river is the flow that comes from Eden, and it's hoilach u'misrachev. It's always expanding because it's connected to a source that is never ending. It's always shooting forth. It's always replenishing it with water. And that's why this nar could come and irrigate Gan. What's Gan? 53. There's 53 parshas in the Torah. So Gan is a metaphor for all the 53 zdarim, all the 53 parshas from Bereshis to V'zos HaBracha. And that's called Torah Shebeksav, which are the 3 parshas. So Eden is the source of Chachma. That's like the source of the Machshava, like the wellspring. Nor Yetzem Eden is when my river is connected to the Eden. That's the Machshava. Nor is like a flow, like the current of thoughts, and it's coming out from Eden. What says it's coming out from Eden? It's connected to the source of the Chachma. So he's Mevin Davar Metoich Davar. So it's further expanding like a river, which is not fixed in one place, but there is a flow and it's increasing and it's expanding. And then that river goes and brings water into the garden. What's the garden? The garden is Torah Shebeksav, which is already Oisis HaDibur. That's the way the Oisis are concretized in words that are written down. So the Nar is like the Machshava that's connected to Eden, and then it goes and it irrigates the 53 parshas of Torah Shebeksav, which are Oisis HaDibur. Valkei Nemar, and therefore the pasuk says, and here we're going to begin to understand the 2 types of letters that we spoke about. The engraved letters and the written letters. Here we already see the written letters are connected, Oisis HaKsav, the way the Nar comes to irrigate the garden. That's already like Oisis HaDibur. So Oisis HaChakika is connected to Machshava, and Oisis HaDibur is connected to Dibur. Oisis HaKsav. Okay, Nemar, therefore the pasuk says in Yehoshua, Perek Chav Daled, we say it in the Haggadah of Pesach, It says like this. Yehoshua spoke to the people. This is the end of Sefer Yehoshua, close to the end. Yehoshua speaks to the people. And he tells them, Koi Amar Hashem. We say it in the Haggadah Shel Pesach. Koi Amar Hashem, Elokei Yisrael. Be'ever hanar yashvu aviseichem me'olam. Your forefathers lived for a long time be'ever hanar, on the other side of the river. Literally, it means on the other side of the Euphrates River. Avram Avinu came from a place called Ur Kasdim. Ur Kasdim, you could go today, Iraq. There's a place they excavated, the ancient city of Ur, Ur. That's where Avram Avinu came from. It's be'ever on the other side of the river. And then, I took your father, Avram, from the other side of the river, and I brought him to the other side, where he came to Eretz Canaan, to Eretz Yisrael. And I promised him the land, etc. That's what Yeshua says. On this, the Zohar asks a question. The Zohar says, Yeshua is telling this to the Jewish people as it's a big piece of news. So the Zohar has expression. The Zohar says, the Jews didn't know this. This was very famous history for the Jewish people. Remember, at the end of Yeshua's life, they already had the Torah for many, many years. In the Torah, they have the whole story, where Avram was born, where he came to. In fact, Avram is called Avram HaIvri. Why is he called Ivri? Hebrew. Ivri is Hebrew. The answer is because he came from the other side of the river. Yeshua is saying, I'm going to tell you about your history. This is what the Zohar asks. So the Alter Rebbe is saying here, no, Yeshua is saying something very big chiddush. Why is Avram called Avram Avinu? Just because he came to the other side of the river. Yeah. They used to call the Jews that came from the other side of the ocean, Agriner, right? An immigrant. He came to the other side of the river. Somebody moved to Monsey, so he moved from Borough Park, so you call him the Borough Parker. Good, he came from the other side of the river. That became the name of the Jewish people, Adayay Mazeh, the Hebrews. Ivrim, we're called Ivrim. Even before Yehudim. Yehudim is much later in the Megillah, Shevet Yehuda. Even before Yisrael is by Yaakov Avinu. The first name that the Jewish people have is, it should be Avram, B'nai Avram. No, we're not called Avram, we're called Ivrim. Ivri anoichi v'esalakim aniyare. Why? Because we came from the other side of the river. Okay, you came from the other side of the river, fine. Like that's everything. Like that became the name of the Jewish people. So the Alter Rebbe says, the pshat is, it's not just talking about the physical river. L'mayla mebchinas nahar. It's describing the state of Neshamas Yisrael. Me'ever anar means on the other side of the river, above the level of the river. In other words, Yisrael alu b'machshava. L'mayla me'ever anar. L'mayla mebchinas nahar. They come from the other side of the river.
It means to say like, I overjumped the machshava?
Yeah, we'll soon see in a moment what that means, yeah. Yeah. If you want to understand the soul, you have to understand that it comes me'ever hanar. It comes from the other side of the river. And he's going to explain to machshava zu yesh gamkin beis b'chinas. Because even when you talk about machshava, there's two aspects. The pasuk in Yeshaya says, my thoughts are not your thoughts. So the expression is machshavosai, not machshavti. In other words, in my thoughts, there's also two types of thoughts. That's why he said before, Yisrael all about machshava ilah. There's machshava tata, a lower level of thought, and a higher level. Ki machshava tata hiya mechayes hadibur. Machshava tata, the lower level of machshava, is the machshava that gives fuel to the words. Ki bilti machshava iyaf shaladaber. If you don't think, don't talk. That's a good rule. Bilti machshava iyaf shaladaber. And he's not just saying a rule, he's saying a fact. Without a thought, pre the word, you can't speak. Now, every word is expressing a thought. There's no word that doesn't come from a thought. The thought is the mother of the word. So it's the chiyus, it's the gas, it's the vitality of the word. It's mechayes hadibur. K'mayim Azal on this, the Gemara says in Brachas, Hashma la'oznecha ma she'ata motzim mipicha. Listen with your ears to what you're saying. What's coming out of your mouth, don't allow only other people to listen. You should also listen. So literally, it means it's a halacha that when you say Krishma, you should be able to hear what you're saying. Hashma la'oznecha ma she'ata motzim mipicha. Shema Yisrael. You have to hear what you're saying. I could speak, you could whisper so low that nobody hears it, but you also don't hear it. So the chiddush is to be hashmal aznecha. The Alter Rebbe is saying it's a general idea. Hashmal aznecha. Listen to what you're saying. Don't just say it. Listen to what you're saying. You should also hear what you're saying. What you're saying should be coming from your inner thought. You hear what you're saying. It's not just other people hear what you're saying. Huh? That's falsetto. Falsetto. So this type of machshava is already connected to dibur. In order for the dibur, for the words, to have a life and to have character and to come out in the proper way, the dibur comes out of machshava, right? A person plans what he's going to think. You may even write it down. So this machshava is called machshava tata. It's already the level of machshava, the way it's fueling the words. It's the inner energy, it's animating, it's giving vitality to the words. Everybody knows. You can hear somebody speak and you see this is this was durchgetracht. In Yiddish it's called durchgetracht. It was thought through. It's gruntig. The words are different. There's eloquence, there's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end, there's structure, there's a theme. Sometimes you hear somebody speak in Yiddish, it's called a ploidet. You know what ploidet means? A ploidezak, yeah. Machshava tata. So machshava tata is all talking about thoughts. But there's the way the thought is already, it's just there to give form to the words. Right? It's machshava. The machshava is a din and dibur. That's not the machshava. The machshava is a din and dibur. In order for the dibur to be organized, right? It's like building a house, yeah? You don't just start building a house. You have to have a plan. You have a blueprint. You have an architect. He makes a plan. And the contractor follows the plan, hopefully. If he's Jewish, it's hard for him to follow the plan. But he's supposed to follow the plan. Yeah? And now you build. You do it with seichel. You don't just... Speaking is building. All speaking is building. You're bringing rocks and you're putting them together. That's what speaking is. The art of speaking, the art of communication is the art of building. You'll see there's different types of speeches. There's a speech that's a building. You come and say, this is a building. There's a foundation, there's the first floor, there's the second floor, there's the third floor, there's a roof, there's a porch. Let's go outside, there's a kitchen, there's also a boiler room. But it's a structure, there's a structure. It could be demolition, yeah. But in order to build such a building, you have to have a blueprint. That's machshava. So machshava here is the blueprint, the plan inside of what I'm going to say. And I follow it. And that's extremely important. Do you hear what you're saying? So it's durchgetracht. That's machshava tata. That's the way machshava is feeding and giving life to the dibur. This machshava already is very similar to words. It also has to be fixed. Because the whole point of this machshava, right? If the blueprint, if the architect in the middle of his drawing has this whole creative plan, so he's erasing and erasing back and creating, you can't build something from that. Machshava, by definition, this type of machshava is already a machshava that's consolidated and defined in order to create. It's like when somebody writes down their speech, it's not changing. That's one level of machshava. But when he said Yisrael Olu b'machshava, he said before machshava ilah, not machshava tata, machshava ilah. The machshava we're talking about before is v'nahar yotze me'Eden. It's the river that's coming out of Eden. It's connected to the source. It's not the machshava the way it descended in order to give vitality to the dibur. It's the way machshava is still in its own source. It's not a mashpia, it's a makabel. Machshava itself could be a makabel and be a mashpia. When the machshava is feeding the dibur, the machshava is the mashpia. V'nar yotze me'Eden, the nar is a makabel. The machshava is open to the source of creativity. That's chachma, which is kayachma. Thank you. You toifus, everybody? Be'evid anar. So be'evid anar is that you have to know where you come from. It's also a very practical idea in life. You know, we often, and it's one of the traps that we're in, and that's what the word trap is. We often see something in ourselves, in our loved ones, and we think what we see, that's what it is. This is what it is. It's fixed. Boom. This is what it is. This is the reality. This is my marriage. This is my family. This is my parnasa. This is who I am. That's falling into a trap where everything is fixed and that's it. It is what it is. It's like the speech was given already. En malasot. The power of chachma, of Eden, is koyach ma. It's the ability to be curious, to be open, right? To be able to say, this may be an interesting perspective. It's not a fixed, that's etched in stone and it's not moving anymore. There's a fluidity. There's a way of looking at it this way. There's another way. When a person is never curious, they already know everything in advance, there's no growth. You know, if you think you understand your child fully, this is who he is, this is who she is, they're not changing, I'm stuck, and they're also stuck. And I'm projecting my stuckness on somebody else. One of the greatest gifts in life is, can I just be curious? Can I be open to questions? Chachma is koyach ma. But he says that Eden is makar ha-chachma. It's the source. What's koyach ma? Koyach ma is the koyach to say what? Ma, I don't know. What? It's not because I'm ambivalent, because I'm spineless, because I love doubts. That's a separate thing. We're not talking about that. It's the ability to be able to be open to fluidity, be open to flexibility, to be open to a different perspective, to be open of thinking about it completely in a different way. We all know that I could be thinking about something in a certain way, and then I go through some journey in my life, and suddenly the same reality is a completely different perspective. I was just looking at it from such a narrow space, so I projected that narrowness on the reality, and I knew what it is. There's an expression in Musa Svarim, Kol, I think it's in Shevet Musa, it's one of the earliest Svarim of Musa, Kol gay shoita. Gay in Hebrew, not in English. Kol gay, Gimel Yud Aleph shoita. Gay from the word gaiva, God. Every arrogant person is a shoita. What's pshat? Some very arrogant people that are brilliant. It's a definition. It's a definition. If you're arrogant, by definition, you're a shoita. Because the key of chachma is humility, koyach ma, the ability to say ma, I don't know. Yeah, I think Einstein once said, if we try to solve a problem with the same paradigms that we had earlier, there's no way we're really going to solve the problem. You have to step away from the whole way of thinking, because that's the way that didn't help you. Any real progress in life and in science and in everything else is the courage to say, ma, maybe there's a different way of looking at it. Maybe I don't know how to look at it. It's an ignorance that creates the greatest growth. And the same is true in everything in life, You're having a very strong emotion towards your spouse. That's very common. Or towards somebody that's very close to you in your life. Okay. But can you pause? Can you breathe? And can you say, 1 second, maybe there's more. Maybe there's more. I don't know everything. To remain in a space where nothing has to be fixed la'olam v'ad forever. There could be a space where there's movement, where there's change. And what happens when you do that is you connect to the wellspring that doesn't change, that's constantly changing. You see, when I go into a fixed place, it's a form of control. And I detach myself from the source of creativity. And whenever there's control, I put myself in a box and I remain trapped in a prison. Opening yourself up to the Mayan, to the wellspring, is I'm not in control, because the wellspring has its own rhythm. But you're open to a different flow. When you're open, new things could come in, new information could come in. You typhus what I'm saying?
To make sure you're open to the right source.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's very humble. It's very humble because I don't know everything. Yeah. So when you say the soul is be'ever hanar, you're never stuck. You're never stuck. You come from the source of the river. When you go to the source of the river is always changing. The river is always increasing. The river is always expanding. That's why there's people that are always growing, they're always challenging themselves, they're never bored. And then there's people, this is who I became when I was 23, and that's it. I don't look back. Yalla, this is who I am, you like me, you don't like me. It's very boring. It's like, there's nothing new. Who I was yesterday, I'm going to be in 30 years. It's going to be the same person. There's no software upgrades. Right? Even AOL understood. There's version 1, there's version 2.0, 3.0, Windows 11, Windows 12. You need to upgrade the system. No, this is, my creativity is dead. This is it. This is my reality, and that's it. It's a terrible curse. I'm using the word curse. I didn't realize it when I said it, but my machshava just put something in. So that's what we're talking about. The word curse in Chumash is an interesting word. Right? When Balak asks Bilam to curse, he says, L'cha kavali. Kavali, right? Kava is a curse. What does kava mean? So when Lavan asks Yaakov, he wants to pay him, he says, Nakva alai scharcha. Nakva alai scharcha means, give me your fixed price. One of the forms of a curse is, it's kava. It's a kubiyah, in a box, fixed. That's a curse. Why? Because that means whatever is, it just is. There's no fluidity. There's nothing nozel. Lo gamish, the lo nozel you say in Hebrew. There's no flow. I'm not connected to a wellspring. This is the water, thus is. Hashmutzika mikveh remains Hashmutzika mikveh lo'elam vad. You go to a wellspring, it can't be dirty. It's dirty today, 5 minutes later. When a person is alive, the thoughts go. It's like clouds. Clouds are not fixed in one place. You look up, there's black clouds. Yeah, the sun didn't stop shining. The clouds move. 10 minutes later, there's a beautiful sun. You go with the clouds. You move. The cloud says, no, I don't move. This is me. It's a black cloud. It's fixed. You're robbing yourself from the sun. There's a whole sun on top of the clouds. Doesn't mean the clouds are not black. The clouds are moving. There's movement, there's motion. I'm not stuck in one place. You see even a body, right? A living body, an expression in Jewish philosophy, Kol Chaim misnoineya. What's the sign of life? There's movement, there's change. Movement means change. There's always movement. Chas v'shalom, when there's no movement, it's a sign of the opposite of life. It's not just true physically, it's true spiritually. The Rabbi used to say, one of the things you see in infants, it's a very interesting thing, one of the things you see in infants, he says, you don't see intelligence. You don't hear words. One of the things you see from the moment they're born is they start moving. Right? You look at a baby in the crib, it doesn't stop moving. We lie in bed and I don't move. He says, you see babies, right? They're always moving. The hands, the feet. Mamish from birth. Why? He says, that's life. Because that's life. Life, you move. You don't stay in one place. In machshava itself, though, you have the way machshava already becomes fixed. I'm planning my speech. I'm speaking and it's coming from machshava. I teach a lot, so I can tell you from experience, I usually plan what I say. Not always, but I usually plan. But very often, I'm in the middle of talking, and suddenly my machshava experiences a whole new thought. And I'm scratching what I planned. Boom, out to nobody knows, only I know. It goes to the garbage. I'm saying something new completely. Why? Because that's excited me. First of all, it's new. I didn't have it before. I prepared it all. It was thought out. I'm saying it, and it's fine. But suddenly, when you're talking, very often words trigger thoughts that trigger from a deeper place. The words themselves are fixed, but as you're talking, we once learned a maimah from Reb Hillel. He explains why. In the process of talking, you touch something deeper, and sometimes you can have a new flow, and I didn't expect it. So it's machshava tata is the way the machshava is feeding the dibur. Now all of this is a metaphor. What's the metaphor? It says, Al Pchinezu Amru Razal, on this Chazal said, Ba'asada mamaris nivra olam v'le'b'mayim echad yachil libaras. It says in Pirkei Avos, the world was created with 10 utterances. Frek the Pirkei Avos Perikei this week. chapter 5. Well, if Maimer Echad Yachal Libaris, he could have created it with one utterance. What did he need 10 utterances? HaMaimer Echad Ubchinis Machshava Zu Amalubeshus Umechayas Klolos HaDibur. This Maimer Echad, that's the Machshava that gives life to all the words. K'Maimer Echad, like the pasuk says in Tehillim Lamed Gimel, HaYoytzer Yachad Liba Ma've'evin Al Kol Ma'aseh. He forms their heart together. He understands everything they do. He discerns everything they do. Asher kulam niskara b'skira achas. The Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah. Everything is scanned in one scan. This is like machshavat hatah. This is maimer echad. You know, it's very interesting. People who speak a lot know this, right? You can prepare a speech, let's say for a few weeks. And then, you're soon going to give it, maybe in 10 minutes, maybe in 5 minutes, maybe in an hour. And you're just going it through in your mind. How long does it take in your mind to go through the half an hour speech? And the answer is it could be 2 seconds. That's called skira achas. It's like a picture, it's a scan. We all know you could think about something, right, for 2 or 3 minutes. You're daydreaming, and then it could take you 5 hours to say it. If somebody says, what were you thinking about? Why? The power of machshava is, it's like almost a picture. You take a picture of a house, you see the whole house, you see everything, but it's a picture. That's how machshava works. That's what he's saying, that's what machshava tata is. That's the maimer echad. The maimer echad is like that one thought that includes all the dibur. In dibur, it must come out with a seder mesuder. Every word has its identity, it's very concretized. It's like building the house. Building of the house, every brick, every piece of lumber, every stone, every wire, it's a whole avoid, that's dibur. Right? Machshava is when I plan the house, it's like this. It's a plan. And if you know what you're doing, boom, you have it. You have it a picture. Composers have it, right? To write out the notes of the song, that's a whole avoida. But the song comes into your head, it's a split second, it's a millisecond. Boom, I have it. And it's everything. It's all there. That's what he's saying. Kulam niskanim b'skira achas. Hayoytzer yachad libam. Hamevin el kol masem. One machshava, one maimer has everything. They have a universe. So Asara Mamaris represents the way the universe comes out in Dibur. Maimer echad is the one maimer that includes everything. It's the machshava. But that's all machshava tata. That's all the way the machshava is feeding the Dibur. You typhus? That's what he says. Avol b'china hashenis. The higher level, but then there's machshava ilah. Machshava ilah is the way the thought is connected to the source of seichel. It's connected to the core of creativity. It's connected to Eden, to the source, right? The source of awareness, from where awareness is coming from. And this is where the letters are called engraved. They're not written. And this is a very, very reiche word. What's the difference between engraved letters and written letters? What did he start the maimer? Written letters, there's the parchment and there's the letter. It's separate. And you can even separate the two. You could erase the ink from the parchment. So even when the oisius are there, the oisius are on top of the parchment as something distinct, even though they connect. You have to erase them, but you could erase them. Oisius HaChakika means there's nothing outside of the stone. You don't have stone, and then you have letters that I'm adding to the stone. It's mehem u'bahem, right? It's from the stone itself. And that's the difference between these two types of oisius. Oisius hadibur also have an idea behind them, but the oisius are they have their own identity. In fact, you could memorize what somebody says and not even understand what he's saying. You can memorize Mishnayos, you have all the letters, but you don't have what's behind the letters. You can hear words, but you don't even know what's behind those words. Even machshava tata are the thoughts that give rise to the words. Over there also, the letters have their own identity. And that's why it's hard to prepare a speech and to speak. Sometimes a person says, I have it. You don't have, you have it inside of you. But in order to project it to others, you have to build it in a way that the letters should capture it, the word should capture it. And that's a separate art. You know what I mean? Sometimes people think they have an idea, they got up to speak, nobody knows what they're talking about. Why? They weren't fooling themselves. Because in your own machshava, you don't need oisius. The oisius are just submerged there. You have the idea, you have the feeling. But no, somebody else doesn't have that feeling. All they have access to is your oisius. So oisius haksiva is the way the machshava comes into the dibur. That's already the Oisius have their own identity. But Machshava Ilah is the way the thoughts are connected to the source of wisdom. And over there's also Oisius, but they're engraved. Meaning the Oisius are completely subsumed and completely part of the experience itself. They're not fixed yet as a separate entity. And that's why there's never-ending growth. It's Kamayim Amizgaber. Once the Oisius assume an identity, so now this is the letter and this is not the letter. This is a word and it's not another word. But in this place, the words and the letters are Oisius HaChakika. What does it mean, Oisius HaChakika? They're completely inside. They're made out of the experience itself, out of the wisdom itself. And therefore, as long as the wisdom is flowing, the Machshava is also flowing with it. That's Machshava Ilah. That's when your thought process is just open to a source of wisdom, and it's not fixed. So then the flow is just constant. It's incessant. It's not fixed in one machshava. That's what he's saying. When you're really in that place, in that flow, you're not experiencing it in words. You're experiencing a flow. There are letters over there. But the letters don't have a separate identity. So the mashal for that is Oisius HaChakika. All you have is the stone. The letters are just part of the stone. Once I'm speaking, here it's all about the words. That's what we have. Once I'm writing, all you have is words. And you can even separate the two, right? I'm telling you, there's a lot of people, they hear things, they don't know what I meant. They just heard words. What do they say? People hear what they want to hear. They can even misconstrue. I can't tell you about how much feedback I get, right? I heard you said this. No, I said the exact opposite. What's the difference? No, this is what you said. The person heard what he wanted to hear. Why? Because that's what happens with words. Words have their own life. That's why you have to be careful with words. So the words are expressing an idea. They're expressing a feeling, but it's like the parchment with the ink. The parchment is the feeling, and the ink is the way it comes out. And it becomes a separate entity. Even machshava tata is that, because it's the thoughts that are already formulated. It's like the blueprint of a house, and it's very fixed. Machshava ilah is the way your thought process is completely connected to the creative source. And over there, it's mevin davar metoich davar v'nahar yoytze me'eden. It's coming out of the Eden. Over there, it's just flow, and there's also Oisius. But over there, the Oisius don't have yet a fixed identity, and therefore there's expansion. You go back, and you go forth, and you go from here, and you go from there. It's like there's infinite, endless creativity.
It's not your planning, it's not your
Yeah,
How do you open
it's opening up to that. Yeah, that's what he says.
How do you do that?
We'll see. So he finishes this paragraph. He says like this: Valkein haneshamas nikru mahalchem. So malachim, which come from dibur, they're called oimdim. They are what they are. They're amazing. It's divine energy. It's not a shevetet. It's God's words. But they're oimdim. They're fixed. They're a manifestation. They are God's speech. They're the energy that came out this way. That's malachim. Malachim are oimdim. But neshamas nikru mahalchim. Why? Since you saw all of the machshava, so the Hashem is all of the machshava, not just machshava tata, which is the maimer echad, but machshava ilah. In other words, they're the source of machshava, connected to the source of awareness. Over there's always newness. So the neshamas have the characteristic that they can constantly expand, to expand the love, to expand the Ot Hashem from day to day, more and more. Mahalchem ad boye lemekar chaytz v'tchilas hamachshava nikras even anar, until the neshama goes back to the source from where it was chiseled out, which is the beginning of machshava, which is Ever Anar, the other side of the river. Ashegam Sham, and over there too, lo yishkad v'lo yanuach. It's not like over there the neshama says, okay, I know who I am, done. It doesn't rest for a moment. It doesn't become smug, complacent, paralyzed. Ki hoylech v'yor. It's an expression in Mishle. He continues to light. K'maymer ha'kasuv v'nahar yoytze. Lashon hoiva. The river comes out. Doesn't say v'nahar yotza. It should have been yotza. No. When you're connected, you're yoytze. It's always coming out. Because you're connected to the source. And the source is always flowing, renew. So v'nar, not v'nar yotzim me'ed, v'nar yoyitzim me'ed l'hashkanas sukkah. Right, it's that ability to reinvent yourself constantly. Right, the ability to constantly be new. You know the word from the Kotzker Rebbe? It's a mighty dicke word. It says in Kaihelas, Medrash Rabbi Kaihelas, that a person has 7 stages in their life. Well, you're familiar. When you're born, it says you're like a melech. Everyone wants to hold you, and they want to know how much you weigh and what you look like and who you look like, and megit covered melachim. You're like a king or a queen. Then he says, once you're 2 years old, he's like a chaza. Wherever there's dirt, the kid is there, and he makes the dirt too. When he's 10 years old, he's like a goat. He's jumping around everywhere. When he's 20 years old, he's like a horse, grooming himself, right, for the women. And then he gets married, and then now he's like a donkey, has schlepped and schlepped and schlepped. You got to support your family. And then he says, you get older and you have more kids, now you become like a dog. You need chutzpah, and you're barking because you got to pay all the bills, tuition with a mortgage. And then his skin, areyu kekaif. When you get old, you become like a monkey. But over there, the Medrash doesn't explain why. His skin, areyu kekaif. And then he says, oh, I'm a aretz. But a ben Torah is not like that. That's what it says over there. It's an interesting Medrash. So the Kotzker Rebbe, the Shem Shmuel brings. Shem Shmuel was a son from the Avnei Nezer, who was a son-in-law of the Kotzker. So the Shem Shmuel says what he heard he heard from his father, he heard from the Zayda, from the Kotzker. I think it's in Tu B'Shvat. Somewhere in Shem Shmuel he brings it, I saw. So most Mefarshim say that monkeys copy people. So he says, when you're older, you have to entertain the Eneklach. They come for Shabbos. So what do? So you start making circuses so that your grandchildren are entertained. Kotzker Rebbe says, no. Monkeys and chimpanzees, they copy people. Hiska, when you become old, you start imitating people. Who do you imitate? You start imitating yourself. You imitate yourself. I lived a certain life. This is who I am, and now I just imitate myself. You stop reinventing yourself. His skin, I already know who I am. I discovered it. That means I interrupted the flow. There's no flow anymore. I brushed my teeth today because I brushed my teeth yesterday. I put on tefillin today because I put on tefillin yesterday. I go to shul today because I went to shul yesterday. The problem is the world is created now. So if I go to shul today because I went to shul yesterday, I'm not going to shul today. I'm dead. Life happens now. V'nor yoytze me'ed. So real machshava is always connected. So now, remember, he said that in Torah you have these 2 types of letters. So he says in Neshama you also have these 2 types of letters. What's the difference? You have the way the Neshama is Oisis Achkika, and the way you have the Neshama is Oisis Aksiva. The way the Neshama is Oisis Aksiva is the way the Neshama comes into a fixed space. Remember, the Neshama also comes through Dibur. Hashem says Nasa Adam, Vayomer Elikim Nasa Adam. So everybody can ask on this Maimon from the Alter Rebbe. He says Malachim come from Dibur, Neshamas come from Achshav. It says in Chumash Vayomer Elikim Nasa Adam. So Adam also comes from Dibur, not from Achshav. He didn't know the pasuk in Chumash. Midvar Hashem Shemayim Nasu. Thank you. It says also on people Nasa Adam. Vayipach Bapav Nishmas Chaim. Right on Adam. It says Vayomer Elikim Nasa Adam. But that's the word. The Neshama has 2 levels, just like Torah. Oisis Aksiva, Oisis Achkik. The way the Neshama becomes embodied, going through the words Nasa Adam, it becomes a fixed reality. And we're tempted to do that. This is who I am, even if it's holy. It's pure holy, but it's fixed. That's the way the Neshama is Oisis Aksiva. Because remember, Oisis Aksiva is the way Oisis become concretized, and they have a conspicuous entity. But the way, this is what Yeshua is telling them, Be'evid Hanor Yoshva V'sechem. You want to be a Jew, you have to be Avrama Ivri. What does it mean to be a Jew? You're Be'evid Hanor. You're always on the other side of the river. Even when you're on this side of the river, you always know I come from the other side of the river. I'm not fixed. I'm not paralyzed. That's why that's the definition of a Jew. It's a moide de kavart. You understand? Definition of a Jew is you always connected to the other side of the river. What's the river? The river is the machshava that flows down. In other words, in the source, that's what he says. You're in Tchilas Eved Anar, you come from that space. So therefore, wherever I am, I'm here. But I'm not fixed, I'm not paralyzed. Eved Anar means you're connected to an everlasting an ever moving and changing and increasing source of creativity. Where the river gets its energy from, that's where your soul comes from. So that's the concept of the soul moving. That's what he says. There shows a mahalach. The malach is an oimed. He is what he is. He manifests energy. That's it. And it's amazing because it's good energy. A person, I don't manifest energy. I create energy. I don't only manifest. I go into the place where it's all new. And therefore, the neshama grows in its av and its yira until it goes back from the place of dibur, goes up to tchilas hamachshava, becoming a channel for an infinite new creativity. And over there too, it doesn't stop. Because the nar is always yotzei me'eden. Okay, we'll stop here at the end of Perek Aleph. And Be'ezer Hashem, Monday morning, we'll continue with Perek Bais. Everybody have a beautiful day. And a new day. We shouldn't copy what happened yesterday. You don't have to copy it. Huh? Kannst du bechazenen. Sometimes when you chazer something, it's like new. It's a beautiful word from the Baal Shem Tov in Pirkei Avos. It says that in Pirkei Avos that David HaMelech, that when somebody haloimed mechaveirei, if you learn from your chaver, yeah, you remember what it says? Perek echad, afilu ois achat. What's the lashon over there? Even one letter, tzarich linig by covet, right? And it says you can learn it from David and Achisayfel that loy lamad David me'Achisayfel ella shnei dvarim belvad. He only learns from him two things alone, and still he calls him Rabbi, Alufoi, Umiyudoi. So certainly, if you learn from Chaveirei, Perek Echad, Halacha Achas, Ois Achas, for sure linig by covet. Frag the Baal Shem Tov, what's the Kal V'chaimer? He learned from Achisayfel two things. So you could learn that if I learn from you two things, I have to respect you. What's the Kal V'chaimer? If you only learned from him two things, you respect him. For sure, if I learn from you one letter, I should respect you. No. Maybe if I learn from you two things, I respect you, one letter not. Yeah? It's a Parshas Kasha. It's a strange Kal V'chaimer. Second thing he asked is, Lo lamad me'Achisayfel ela shnei dvarim bilvad. It should have said, Lo lamad me'Achisayfel ela shnei dvarim. I know, two things is two things. It was bilvad. So the Baal Shem Tov says that there's two types of learning. The Achisayfel's learning, it was Shnei Dvarim Bilvad. He says usually every inyan in Torah gives birth to other things. It's part of Irava. The Torah is part of Irava. It multiplies, it increases. By Achisayfel it was Shnei Dvarim Bilvad. It was, that's it. It was Nakvas Chana, that's what it was. Fixed. So Mela, that's the Kal V'chaimer. When you learn from him two things bilvad, so when you learn from Yechaver, who's not like Achisayfel, the Ois Achas has within it much more, so that's the Kal V'chaimer. That's why it says the word bilvad. That's an example for this inyan. Ich habe gesagt von Ayazeda, Geschmacke Wort. This is an Einikel from the Ponim Yafas. Why Malachim are called Mahalchim? Oimdim. That you have to learn from a malach. You have to learn from a rebbe who's ready to be an oimed. Huh? Ponim Yafas, yeah?
Yeah, you have to. You said the koif. When you get old.
Yeah, hiskin areu kekoif. Macht sich noch.
There's a nice example of Chaim Mendel is the country Chaim Mendel the Batchen.
Yeah, Chaim Mendel the Batchen.
So he asked permission to make how he dabbled. And he started to make he started to make and the Satan started crying. So he said, I'm sorry, I'm children. No, he said, no, not the, I'm afraid that this must have.
Wow. Ich mach sich allein noch, huh?
Yeah.
The rest of us in itself.
The point in the story is that
Just like you're copying me, I'm copying myself too. I'm copying myself too. Puppet show. It's a puppet show. Yeah.
I was thinking, the older wife, she learned so much Torah. But it's just opposite, it sounds like. You know what I'm saying? Not to be a monkey when you're older, you should be learning more Torah because it's so hard to...
Yeah. Yeah. Not to copy yourself, yeah. Yeah, but best is theyeshiva.net. Theyeshiva.net. The THE. Probably in a few days it'll be also on Torah anytime. Theyeshiva.net, that's where it's live. You can watch it live and it stays there. They put it also, it's also on Torah anytime, probably, I don't know, when the guy puts it on, both, and it's also, yeah, but theyeshiva.net, that's where it's live and it's also YouTube.
I have a question. I'm sure you will be able to. There is a saying. Children, when you
Yeah.
most love, ask it for.
No, halt 10 minutes. Hello.